now as I can see, people are just pouring into the room from the back. Definitely feel free to fill from the front, guys. I think we know what time it is then. It can only mean one thing. We're about to kick off the grand finale of our SaaStock pitch competition. We've been building towards this for the week. Exactly. Shout out all these folks. We started with 50 startups at the beginning of the week. We've now come down to the final 3. Right? And so before I introduce them, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of how this is going to work. As I mentioned, we have 3 finalists who are going to be joining me up here. Each of them are going to have 5 minutes to come up and pitch their startup, tell you about what they're working on. Afterwards, they're going to be asked a series of questions by our judges who are here with us at the front for another 5 minutes. Right? We're going to try to stick to that 5 minutes just to keep them going. So judges, again, we will let you know when that 5 minutes is up just so we can keep things on time. But without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome that first startup on stage. So if you guys can join me in giving a big round of applause for Jonathan Anderson with Can-Do. Give it up. There we go.
Amazing.
Awesome. I will give that to you.
Fantastic.
Best of luck, Jonathan. Your time starts now.
Thanks, Jack. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here in Dublin. So I want to start with something a little bit radical. I think that your product should sell itself. And right now, it might not, right? It might require salespeople, it might require CSMs, but I think that actually it should be a little bit better at selling itself. And I want to talk a little bit about how to do that. And the answer is product-led growth. Cool. So I think there's probably 4 ways right now that you're engaging with your customers, right? One of them is the best, which is sales and CSMs. It's expensive, but nothing beats a conversation. You're also probably sending a lot of emails. These don't work that well. You might be sending some pop-ups. These can be a little bit annoying if we're being honest. And there's one other area that's actually really important, which is actually the product's UI itself. The UI and the UX, the actual product experience. What we want to do at Can-Do is make it really cheap because we want to enable product and growth teams without engineers to actually make this themselves. Cool. I want to show you a couple ways you can do that. So a lot of people, when they think about building a product, they think, I need to work through the sprint cycle. What we think is that you should be able to build a component in an editor, much like Figma, but unlike Figma, you should be able to publish it into your product. That's how it ought to work. Right? Cool. I have 3 tips right now if you're trying to become more product-led. If you're trying to help your product sell itself just a little bit better. Here are 3 really, really simple things that you can do. They're going to have a really big impact on self-led activation, on onboarding, on conversion, and on upgrades. OK? Number 1, you should first ask your users what they're in your product to do. Right? Not just so you can qualify them as a sales lead, oh, that's very helpful, but also so that you can figure out this new sign-up, what do they care about? And then you should change the experience of your product to match. As a new user, I should feel seen, and I should immediately understand what I need to do to be successful. Kat from People Data Labs, she's a product manager, did not code anything, had 2 simple questions, right? Why do we need this data, and how technical are you? And then based on that sign-up flow, she then changed their homepage. It doubled their activation rate. That's a huge deal. Cool. All right, the next one I want to talk about is how do you get people to convert, right? OK, another really, really simple tip. If your product does a lot of things, and I bet a lot of products here do a lot of things, right, for lots of different users, simplify it and make it relevant. If there are core use cases that you recommend today, those should be in your product. In this case, it says get started with popular apps of Make. What you don't see is that these apps change depending on who the user is, what industry they're in, what they care about. Right? To me, it feels, oh my god, this product was built just for me. And that's right. But also, it's built for everyone else. It's just that these tiles swap out. Right? So a really, really simple way to improve engagement with your product is to add a little touch of personalization and include recipes, workflows, integrations that are relevant for that specific user. Great. I can feel the engineers being like, oh, it's a lot of work. That's OK. And the third really, really important thing to do is to sell the sizzle of your product. You've got lots of great things that your product does, and I would really, really, really recommend telling users why it will be important to them. This is perceived value. It's not realized value. This is not after they've set up the data. This is why they should integrate their data, because ultimately they'll get value from it. Right? It doesn't require a lot of work, you think, but really it's marketing. It's giving a new user an awareness for why it's important to them. Gorgeous booked a lot of revenue through this little tiny banner, and so can you. right? If you have a feature page, before someone uses that feature, give users a really, really good reason why they should adopt it. So that way, when they do talk to you, they come to you. You're creating demand within your own product. Your product is becoming your most popular and most important channel to communicate. Cool. We've created, I say we because I feel like it's my tool, but really these amazing growth and product leaders have made really great experiences that have fundamentally changed how their users interact with their product. There's a lot of good ideas in your company that aren't getting done because it's too expensive right now. Cool. I feel like a lot of people here who are technical are saying, I know, I can do all that stuff that we showed on the prior screens. And that's true, you can. You can also do anything else with your time. And I'm sure as a lot of leaders, CEOs, product leaders, you are going to have very ambitious roadmaps. And what I want you to do is spend more of your precious engineering calories on those projects and leave us, the people who care a lot about activation, onboarding, retention, let us worry about the content. Cool. I would love to see more product managers become product creators. And we would love you to try out Can-Do. So great. I think with that, I have some questions.
I will hard cut them on the question.
Cool.
Thank you, Jonathan. Great delivery. So my question for you is, how do you scale with your clients?
Oh, that's a great question. So if you're a startup starting out, you're probably going to want a best-in-class template that you can grab. Let's take ChargeBee, for example. I love their onboarding flow. Great. Let me clone it, and then I can put it into my product, right? You're doing a 0 to 1. If let's say you're a Make, you're pretty far along down the path. You've got thousands of users. You're thinking about branching. You want to create different experiences for different sets of users, right? So I think it really does depend a little bit on where you kind of are in that journey. But in terms of scaling, I would like, if I'm being honest, I want every single image, every word, every feature that's within a product to be managed through an editor like Can-Do. Not necessarily ours, but I think ours is great. So that you can let the rest of your team internally manage that content.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
One, how do you draw the line not to change the product too much versus how much customization you can do with Can-Do? And second, can you tell us a little bit more about your team?
Yes. OK, so there were 2 questions here. One was, where's the line between what you should build with code versus what you should not build with code? OK, yeah?
Yes.
OK, great. So right now, this is actually such a good question because when we think about no code, we usually think about Bubble. Or we think about building a standalone product entirely with no code. Where I want people to move to is to think about no code as something you can actually embed into a product. So you can still get the benefits of no code without necessarily building the whole thing from scratch. Because let's face it, almost none of our products are built with no code. In terms of where I would start, a really good place to start is the onboarding experience. Think about high iteration parts of your product. So if you can build it once, if it's functionality and you know it's going to work, by all means, put a developer on it. But if you're going to iterate or tinker, if you want to change this question, this image, whatever it is that comes up, please build it in a way that will accept for future change. And that's when you really want to enable something like Can-Do. Cool. Yeah, great question. There was a second question about our team. Yeah, so we're 15 people. I'm obviously very American. I live in California. My team is mostly based in London. Yeah, happy to answer more questions about that. Go ahead.
Thanks. It's Tom from CMS. Can you just give me a bit of input on your charging structure?
Yeah. Yeah. So the way I would like us to think about is how much dev time you're saving, right? We need to be less than it would obviously cost an engineer to build it, without a doubt. But actually, the way we think about pricing is the number of editors you have, so people who create the content, and then the number of MAUs that you have. So how many people interact with the components? With the idea being, really what we're helping you drive is engagement within your own product. And we do have a special startup plan for those of you who are in startups. Feel free to apply online. Yeah.
And so that's quite sort of usage driven.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you sort of track your outcomes? The sort of the people you quote there on the slides.
Yeah.
Is it a phone call to ask them how they're finding it, or are you actually able to chart the success?
Yeah, this is another really good question. How do you actually measure the success of any piece of UI, right? First of all, that is the right frame, right? How do you ensure that everything in your product is performing? If it is not performing, you need to take it out, subtract. What we look for, though, is how many users interacted or saw this piece of UI, And then we basically track everything natively. So if you add a button to the canvas, we're tracking it. And then we just push that right along into your data analytics suite, right? Maybe you're using Amplitude or Heap or Mixpanel. And we're then able to say, hey, given that they got this treatment, they got this specific onboarding flow, let's say, for example, what happened to them next? And I think that's really, really, really important. Because honestly, most of the stuff in our applications is not being tested in that way, and we think the bar should be a little bit higher.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Oh my gosh, should I ask my own questions? No, I'm just kidding, I won't do that. Great. That's it. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks so much. Can do. Yeah, check us out. There you go.
Great stuff, Jonathan. Well, again, moving right along, we're going to welcome up our second finalist who's going to join me here on stage. This is Juan Andrade from Rebank. Let's give it up for Juan here. Here we go. Awesome, there you go. Best of luck, Juan. Your time starts now.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm one of the founders of Rebank. My name is Juan, and I know something about all of you today. You're all trying to cut spend and grow at the same time. I also know that since COVID, you have more international customers, you have more international employees than ever before. These two new imperatives are what's making it almost impossible for global startups to understand their finances without hiring a finance manager or an ops manager. In fact, we know it takes at least 8 tools just to understand finances. And if you have multiple entities, there's a lot of duplication. And these tools don't even talk to each other, so every month you have to reconcile everything. Rebank is the financial source of truth for global startups. Connect your banks and the rest of your finance stack in 5 minutes, and understand exactly how much cash you have and what's happening to it, and where you're spending your money. Use Rebank to pay global invoices from any of your entities while saving money through our borderless accounts. Move money between your entities without having to worry about complex tax documentation and 10 to 30K fines from tax authorities in different parts of the world. I want to go one step further with this, because if you don't suffer from this problem right now, you will eventually. So this is where we all start, right? We have big dreams. We need a bank and an accounting tool to make it happen. We scale, we get some venture capital, and we want to automate our back office. We bring in more tools. But this step is actually creating more problems than it solves, because none of these tools talk to each other. So what do? You hire a finance manager, an ops person, and they have to cobble all of this together. Not with Rebank. With Rebank, you connect your core financial tools, and then we replace things like FX, bulk payment tools, and even payroll. So that financial data is either flowing into or being created by Rebank. In this way, we're helping our customers save £500 a month on fees, or automating their workflows from 12 minutes down to 12 seconds. We're effectively keeping financial teams stable whilst you grow, and in doing so, we've 11x'd our main usage metric in the last 12 months, monthly payment volumes. But it's actually the next 12 months that I'm even more excited about, because the way we've built Rebank means that we're already live in the US and Europe with customers in those regions, 170 to be exact. But with an engineering team of 3, we've done that, and we can now expand our global coverage of financial tools into LATAM, Asia, Australia, the Nordics, the rest of Europe. Now, that not only makes our TAM nice and juicy, and pretty big for a fintech of our size, but it also means that we're going to be the first truly global fintech product. And I'll explain more about that right at the end. So this great product that focuses on startups and corporates wouldn't be possible without a great team. We're just 9 people, but in that team, we have former founders, we have an astrophysicist that you may have spoken to today, and even a former combat systems engineer. And before you ask, yes, they are very useful in fintech. You see, I had to sit through this crap working at a travel startup, Secret Escapes, and other startups before. Financial data was spread across continents and banks and tools, and it took a lot of people an unnecessary amount of time to answer simple questions. It took us 12 months to open a bank account in the US. But having been on the other side now, I understand why that happened. You see, fintech business models today carry a heavy regulatory burden. They're tied to one region, and by design, do not like global growth. They cannot support it. That's why by abstracting these tools into a new layer and positioning ourselves as a unifying layer, we're able to grow with our customers, no matter what banks they use and change over time, and focus on automating workflows instead of looking after compliance. That's why I believe we're going to be the company to truly make it possible for businesses to operate without finance teams. I'm Juan, one of the founders of Rebank, and we're the financial source of truth for global startups. Thank you.
Hi, Juan. Thank you. This is Audrey from Speed Invest. My question for you is around user engagement. So could you tell us a bit like how many of your customers are using Rebank for payments as opposed to for analytics? And how quickly do these customers convert? And maybe also what are the mechanisms that are in place to convert them?
Yeah. In terms of usage quickly, we're a weekly use product. Our wow MAU is 53%, puts us in line with Uber and PayPal on a far smaller scale, obviously. It's about 50% of our customers that are using us for payments, but they use us for payments and analytics. Yeah. And if I just describe how a typical team uses us, the CFO will usually log in multiple times a week just to check money. Instead of using Barclays and other banks, you see everything in one place. The finance manager will manage invoices, upload invoices into Rebank, and then pay them with, with accounts that we create and top up for them. And how long does that take? Well, it takes 5 minutes to connect your banks. It takes a few minutes to add, to authorize you and for you to start being able to send money. So like in terms of onboarding, it's minutes. One thing that we are using now, especially in the last 9 months to sort of accelerate or fast track that sort of value capture is inside sales. So we've got companies like Zego, like 500 people self-serving, using a very small part of the product. And with that information, we can look at, okay, how much international FX are they sending? Could we become a viable solution for them? And we use that just to hop on a call with them, and that's it. After a 30-minute call, we can usually increase ACVs from 5K to 15 over a period of 30 days.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Ivan. Great presentation. Can you tell a little bit more about your, how do you charge your customers? What's the pricing model? Thanks.
Yeah, so we have a few tiers. The gating is really around payments at the moment. And we have 3 types of revenue right now. We have subscription, we have transaction, and FX. All of them are growing. But FX in particular is growing at the most, sort of taking the biggest share of our revenue. Our customers pay basis points on FX and a monthly subscription. That's it. So yeah, our average revenue per customer is about 5K at the moment. It can be much more for some companies.
Thank you.
Hey, Juan. Hi, it's Tom from CMS. Good presentation, thanks. Are you sort of expecting there to be a natural sort of end to the journey with customers? If at the moment you're sort of designed to replace the finance teams and you're concentrating on startups, when they get to that size where they've gone through their fundraising rounds and actually they probably, as an international global company, do require a finance team, is that then the end of Rebank with them, or are you expecting to be so embedded with them by that point?
Not at all, not at all. If you take the sort of neobanks that are focusing on the brick and mortar, like they're doing great, those guys definitely have a very short sort of shelf life. We're kind of the opposite of that. Because you can change your banks, change whatever tools you're using, add and remove, even accounting as well, naturally, just by the design, it's always going to outlive any individual financial tool. The one blocker or one thing that we'll have to face in the future, pretty head on, is CFOs. When you've got established CFOs, FTSE 1000, they come in with their sort of finance stack. And I think that's going to be something that we'll face in the next 12 months, but no, because the product is self-serve, that's not happening right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Great job there, Juan. All right, last but not least, we have our third and final finalist of the afternoon. Please, let's give a big round of applause for JP Lewin from Foundy. Let's give it up.
Thank you.
Best of luck. Your time starts now.
Hello, everyone. My name is JP Lewin, founder of Foundy. We're an M&A marketplace for startup acquisitions. I've met a lot of impressive founders over the last few days, adding a lot of value along the supply chain, from HR to marketing to tech. Foundy, though, is uniquely positioned at the end of this journey, where all this hard work, sweat, blood, and tears culminates in the form of an exit, a liquidation event where those investments are turned into liquid cash. But for someone that has been through the process of M&A, building my last company to about 30 or so team members and the leading company through an exit, I've learned firsthand how stressful and complicated this process is. So we're modernizing it. You're familiar with Rightmove and Kazoo, just how they modernize the process of buying houses or selling cars. We're wanting to do the same for M&A. I want everyone here to consider a scenario, whether you're a founder, but also as an employee or an investor in a given company, 3 years in, thousands and thousands of hours later, and you're in a scenario where potentially you're growing, and you've got a lot of team members to look after, but you're listening to everyone, and the typical saying goes, oh, don't worry about the exit. No need. Focus on the product, focus on the customer. Well, during a period of economic uncertainty, this is a really unwise move, for sure. A failure to plan to exit will lead to a lot of stress and panic. Buyers will see through that. They'll drop the valuation. You'll pay excess amounts in advisory fees, and consequently, you'll be forced to accept a valuation potentially lower than your last funding round. It's not something that any founder wants to go through, but unfortunately, it's happening at scale. A better scenario, and I hope one that you would agree with, is from an early stage, plan how you're going to exit. Gain access to all the relevant digital tools so you know how to build a company that is somewhat acquirable, how to find the right advisors to help you along the way, and you've got everyone from tax, brokering, negotiation, valuation setting, legal, and everyone in between. Ultimately, your employees are happier if you can get through in a more efficient process because they have more job certainty, and ultimately, you can then complete a deal reasonably efficiently, and you can begin to think about what you're going to do with that extra 1 or 2 million that you're able to successfully negotiate in your exit. Foundy has recently emerged as one of the fastest growing startup ecosystems in Europe. We've gained 726 companies between both startups, sellers, and also buyers. We've secured 3 partnerships as well, recently CapDesk, and we announced quite a significant pre-seed, which we raised in about 4 weeks with just a pitch deck. One of the reasons why we're growing very quickly and why there is quite a bit of investor interest at the moment is because of the state of the market at the moment. A lot of companies are struggling to fundraise. It's no longer the highs as we had in 2021. Instead, we have a lot of companies struggling to fundraise and turning to earlier exits. Yet when it comes to that point, the process is riddled with inefficiencies. Finding appropriate buyers, finding relevant advisors, time kills deals. The costs associated with those advisors as well can be in excess of hundreds of thousands of pounds. And when you're exiting just for 1 to 3 million, it's unreasonable. That money is no longer in the founder's pocket, but instead in someone else's. Anonymity as well, and that's what we're solving here at Foundy. An end-to-end digital platform that empowers founders with the resources that they need, the advisors that they have to have access to in order to complete rewarding exits. We use AI, we use machine learning to facilitate matchmaking between buyers and sellers, and then online document workflow, similar to that of DocuSign, to facilitate efficient document processing. Here's the product in action. On the right-hand side, we've got the marketplace itself. On the left, we've got the instant chat facility. The team, I built and sold my last marketplace company, learned a lot from the process. Garish and the rest of the team have experience between investment banking, SaaS, and marketplace. We're growing extremely quickly. We're expected to generate over 1 million in revenue in our first year of monetization, 33% month-on-month growth, 3 times higher than average website traffic to conversion. We've got a buyer budget, $485 million in the last 3 months is the total combined buying power, and we're only 3 months in. The size of the market is really interesting. So fundamentally, from 22 million companies globally, we only need to facilitate 3,000 out of 22 million to generate around 50 million in revenues. And looking at acquisitions in our market, that's a 20x multiple. How do we differentiate? Very early mover advantage in Europe. We focus on higher quality listings. The average valuation on the platform is around 2 million. We've got various features focusing on both secondary share sales and full buyouts, and we've got competitively low pricing. But we can offer those pricing because of the technology that we use to facilitate automation in the M&A process. Lastly, we're raising 600K at the moment before a much larger seed round next year. EIS, of course, and interestingly, the exit itself, which is obviously important to any given shareholder, we will sell Foundy via Foundy. We'll utilize our massive buyer network when the time comes in however many years to facilitate the acquisition of Foundy, whether it's a private equity company or an investment bank that wants to digitalize and buy into our deal flow. It's a really exciting space, very passionate about what we do. It's definitely driven by the passion from my last company because I want to modernize the process. I do not want founders to face the stress and struggles and sleepless nights that I went through selling my last company. And we're doing that in the year 2022 because there needs to be a digital solution for M&A. Thank you very much for your time. Any questions?
Hi, JP. Audrey from Speed Invest. Thank you for this great presentation. So my question is mainly around how do you scale with regards to legislations, and can this be done like cross countries?
Mm-hmm. How do we scale progressive legislations?
Yes.
So it is fundamentally scalable in that regard. We're partnering with a leading online document specialist to create UK documents to start with, and then we're going international, likely going from France, Germany, US, and they seem to be the hot markets. Yes, fundamentally, whilst there are regulations that we need to abide by, we're matchmaking rather than providing full-on advisory. So yes, it's scalable, particularly with regards to automation. For perspective, there's a company in the US, a lot of respect for them. They have a team of just 25 staff, and they generate about 80 acquisitions every single month. And they last valued at around $100 million just 2 years after starting the company. No one yet in Europe, though, has capitalized on this market at scale.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, JP. Samitra here from Freshworks. How do you curate the buyers and sellers on the platform? How do you qualify them, whether they should be on platform or not?
Sure. 90% of our customers at the moment are inbound. We have a vetting process. We have a minimum standard of revenue that they have to hit. At the moment, it's just 10K. So actually, we have a lot of micro SaaS companies on the platform, which is quite a big market at the moment. 10K revenues, stable or growing customers. We look at their P&L. We look at various other sets of criteria in order to make sure the quality of listing is there. We only approve 1 out of every 5 companies that apply to list because we want to maintain the quality of deal flow for our buyer network.
Thank you.
Hi there. Hey, it's Tom from CMS. I'm one of those pesky legal M&A advisors that you were talking about on the slides. Just out of interest, you said your sort of target valuation sort of 1 to 2 million. So that it's sort of the lower end, I guess, of acquisitions. And I guess existing sort of mainstream brokers are dealing with the mid-market stuff. But at that low valuation, the numbers you quoted there in terms of how much revenue you need and how much you can, is that all pegged off 1 to 2 million valuation on sales?
Actually lower. So the average, in order to make $50 million in revenue, we need to make around 3,000 acquisitions at a valuation of around 400K. Small businesses. But actually, interestingly, since starting Foundly, we've seen that a lot more well-established companies are choosing to list on the platform, around the 2.5 million mark. We want to find an average around the 1 to 2 million. That's our sweet spot. So actually, it will be around 1,500 companies or so that we need to facilitate to make that 50 million revenue mark.
And is that charging you charge a percentage then basis of the valuation?
Correct, 1 to 3%. But there's clever ways in which you can use subscription products and upselling things like pitch deck creations, P&L summary creation, in order to mitigate the costs of deals falling through. And that way, the success fees on top, borderline pure profit. So there's a way in which you can cover your costs throughout.
Got it. And just one final question, just to pick up on what you said there. How much of the substance actually goes on the platform? I'm thinking about regulation and financial regulation. And are you you're sort of matchmaking, but obviously the rules are quite broad in terms of what it can catch and like ranging transactions. So how are you outside of that?
Sure. So fundamentally, Foundly's value proposition is in the quality of deal flow that's coming into the platform. It's not necessarily in the technology in the platform. And therefore, we're not going to prioritize building the technology ourselves for the full end. We're going to be partnering with specialists in online document workflow, AI legal document review, and everything in between. So we are, with that regard, kind of above any kind of issues on the regulatory side. Right. Mostly just matchmaking.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Fantastic. Thank you, JP. And again, a big shout out to all of the finalists who were here today, as well as all more than 50 that pitched over the week to get to this. Again, we're going to give our judges just a few minutes as they're tallying up the scores. While they're doing that, I just want to give a little bit of a moment to introduce each of them. I know you heard some of them from them there. So for today, we have Tom Jameson from CMS. He will be joined by Sumitra Deshpande from Freshworks for Startups. And finally, Audrey Handem from